We've had our RV on the road now for a few months and a few thousand miles without a rear view camera on the RV. Now, with about 5 years and 44,000 miles on our old RV with a rear view camera, I've gotten pretty comfortable at gauging distance in my side view mirrors, but I would much prefer to have a camera back there. As you can imagine, there's a huge blind spot behind the RV that you just can't see from the truck. We decided to try out this VisionWorks camera from our friends Eric and Tammy at Techno RV. You know that we absolutely love Techno RV. If you call them for support, you're going to get a human. If you chat with them, you're going to get a human. We really like supporting the products that they support, and we know that they vet these products thoroughly, so we felt good that the VisionWorks would do the job well. For the record, you know, there was nothing wrong with the Furrion camera that was on our old RV, but it went with the old RV, so you know we like to try new and different things, so that's why we're trying out this VisionWorks. This camera kit we're installing has the 5-inch monitor. They sell this in a 5, 7, and 9-inch monitor. The reason we went with the 5-inch is because we're only going to be monitoring one camera. This thing can do 4, but also our dash is already fairly crowded with other stuff, and that is about the same size we had with our Furrion cameras. That's why we just kind of went with the same size. Let's just jump into the install. Before I start a project like this, I want to make sure I get a good inventory of all the pieces and know where they're going to go. This particular kit actually comes with quite a bit more than I'm actually going to use. Namely, they have these AC power adapters to adapt down to DC for both the monitor and the camera piece. Now, we're not going to use that because we're going to wire them straight into DC, but I get why they put those in here. In a lot of these newer RVs, there are camera mounts and things inside. Or maybe you want to put another camera inside somewhere that's not near a 12-volt source and you just want to plug it in. So that's kind of neat. They also provide a couple of other things like a cup holder mount. Won't be using that. They also have a suction cup mount, which is, you know, obviously much more usable in a vehicle. And that seems to mount on pretty well here. Slides right in and then clamps down, so I kind of like that. I think we're probably going to figure out a way to mount this into our current mounting system in the truck, which we'll show you at the end. Also not part of the kit is this Furrion adapter. This basically adapts to the Furrion mounts that come pre-installed on a lot of RVs, including our own. And that'll of course mount there to the camera. But before I do anything, one handy use of these AC adapters is I can plug everything in here and make sure it works. So let's do that. Nice, there's the view outside. Things that also came with it are this DC adapter for the monitor piece. This of course will be 12 volts directly into this. Also this wire here, simple 2 wires, and this will wire to the back of the RV. Also 2 other accessories that aren't part of the kit that they gave us when they saw us at the Tampa RV show is this guy here. This is really just an antenna extension for the camera, so if you're having trouble with the signal reaching the truck, then this is an option. This basically plugs right into it, and then we can run it and mount the antenna on the front of the RV instead of the rear of the RV. I hope we don't need this. Another thing that they gave to us, because they said there's an issue on newer trucks supplying clean DC power, is this guy here. And this basically plugs into the 7-way on the truck, and then you plug the trailer into here, and that supposedly cleans up the power from the truck. Again, I hope this is something that we don't need because this looks like a bit of a pain. Appears to be all in order. It's not that complicated. It's just DC wiring in the truck supplied by a little cigarette lighter adapter, and DC wiring in the back supplied by either the RV or the truck 12-volt system through the wiring harness. Before we jump to the back of the RV, I want to clarify what I mean by 12 volts supplied by the truck or the RV. A lot of these newer RVs come with pre-installed mounts for camera systems. It could be a Furrion, it could be another. I think all the Grand Designs come with Furrion mounts. That's pretty common. but the difference is in how it's wired. And I can't speak to how any RV is wired, even Grand Designs, new or old, who knows. On our 397, when I went to wire that one in, it was wired into our RV's 12-volt system. Now what that means is it was on anytime the RV had 12-volt power, which is pretty much all the time. You have the battery connected, and that means that camera is on 24/7, which isn't great if you're going to park your RV for a while or store your RV. It's just going to drain your battery down unless you completely disconnect your battery or somehow shut that system off. Whereas if it's wired to the lights on the RV, the marker lights, that is powered by the 12 volts from the 7-pin connector on the truck. And I prefer that. In fact, on our 397, I went through great pains to remove the wiring from the RV and dig wires out from the lighting system. And it was a huge pain, so I was really hopeful that wasn't the case here. Now, if it's powered from the truck, I kind of find that to be a lot better, simply because it's only going to be on when you're driving and traveling down the road and connected to the truck. It's also, for me, a good reminder to turn my headlights on, because that will turn on your marker lights. Now, if you're towing a trailer, a fifth wheel, anything, you should be driving with your headlights on. And it's not about you being able to see, it's about people being able to see you and making you more visible going down the road. In fact, a lot of states have laws that if you're towing, you need to have your headlights on. So for me, it's just a good reminder to turn that on. If my camera doesn't come on, I know, oh, I forgot to turn on my headlights. And quite honestly, I've forgotten to turn on my headlights a lot in the last couple of months driving without this camera. And back then, when I installed it on our 397 and I was frustrated by the fact that it was plugged into the main power and not the 12 volt from the truck, I mentioned it to Grand Design to say, hey, you know, this really should be wired to the marker lights. So I was really curious to see what I would find when I got up there. Okay, it's actually the next day. You know how I do these projects, I don't do them all at once. And you know how it always goes with filming, there's always somebody with a weed whacker nearby. So we'll go back inside and wait till he's done.
20 minutes later.
Weed eater man is gone, so let's go see what we got. Right up there. After getting up there and getting the mount off, I could see the wire coming out, and it had the plug for the Furrion camera. And I just decided to cut that off and just do my own wiring. The instructions on the VisionWorks camera do say that the plugs might be compatible and might need some trimming around the plug for the Furrion to make them fit. I didn't see how that was possible, how they were going to fit, and I didn't want to have to be carving out a plug. I would rather just use their plug and wire it into the 12 volt. So my first step was to strip those wires and take a reading on those with my multimeter to see what voltage I had with no truck connected. All right, we got no voltage. That's a good sign. 0 volts is exactly what I was hoping for. It's looking good. So I pulled the truck around and got it connected. Now, hopefully we've got 12 volts on that line. That will be awesome. That would be great to not have to rewire anything. That's not good. Oh, hey. Okay, that is good. That is good. Hopefully. I forgot to turn the headlights on the truck. Remember I was talking about that reminder? Well, I am now reminded. So as soon as I turned the headlights on, I had 14 volts, which is what you would expect with lithium batteries. Awesome. Yay! 14.2 volts DC. Now I just have to wire up the camera. I decided I wanted to tap into the source wires instead of using those tiny wires that were connected to the original plug, simply because I don't like splicing tiny wires together. I never feel quite confident about that. So I was able to get some needle nose pliers in there and pull out the source wires. The kit came with some splice taps, which I don't ever use on any kind of high amperage application, but on something like this, they're perfectly fine. However, the ones supplied weren't quite big enough to go around the fat connectors that were wiring up the marker lights. So I had my own that I used. I popped those on and it spliced in really, really easy. These things are great and nice and easy when they work. There we go. Got it all buttoned kind of back up, and then I realized that the rubber gasket that the Furrion put behind the mount was going to interfere with me getting the wires back in there. It was also going to interfere with the rubber grommet that's connected to the wire on the VisionWorks camera. Oh, how's this big thing going to get through there? So I took it back off. I was able to trim a hole around that, put it back on, gave me plenty of room to put the wires back in and the grommet. If you're wondering what that little nubby looking thing is with a button on it, that's actually a button for the pairing process for the camera and the monitor. I didn't need to do that, but it's not something I'm going to cut off of there, so I wanted to be able to shove it back in that hole. Once that was done, all that's really left is to mount that camera and put the antenna on it. And from there, I went down and I checked the camera feed using the 120 volt supply that I used to test it originally on the dining room table. Oh yeah, there we go. Phase 1 is complete. The main difficult part is done, which is that camera. So now all that's left is to go install the monitor in the truck. But before we do that, I have a favor to ask you. If you get value out of this content, and we'd really love it if you'd give us a thumbs up, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Those things help our channel immensely, and we really appreciate it. I was kind of hoping that the supplied mount that mounts onto the back of the camera and screws on nice and tight would fit into our RAM mount system, but the ball was too small, didn't really fit in that mount, so I decided to use the plain old flat round panel that our last camera was connected to. That round connector has just been sitting empty in our truck since we got rid of the 397. If you're curious about this mounting system we have in here, it's all RAM mounts. The thing in the tray is called a Built-Right. I covered all this in our F450 video when we got that last year, so I will link that down below if you're curious about those details. But long story short, I have DC connectors under the tray up here. DC connectors being cigarette lighter adapters. If you're familiar with, cars that used to actually have cigarette lighters in those that you'd push in and they'd light up and you'd light your cigarette or whatever. But those were already up there from the last camera, so there wasn't a whole lot to wire in here. All I had to do was pull that tray up, wire in the new camera. It's all connected right here to upfitter switch 3, and it's good to go. If you remember, I showed you those extra accessories that VisionWorks gave us when we saw them at the Tampa show. I was hoping I wasn't going to need either of those. However, as I was doing my setup and playing around with it, I noticed it was cutting in and out a little bit, and the signal would go from 1 bar to 3 and down. So I went ahead and took that extension up on the roof and got it installed. I decided I'm going to go ahead and put this up on the roof. I'm hoping I can just lay the cable on the roof and come back and tie it down later. As long as there's not a lot of slack to blow around, it should be fine running north-south. So let's go up on the roof and see how long this thing is. It's good to know how to one-arm climb a ladder. You gotta carry stuff. As I suspected, we just have way more cable than we need. I would love to redo this end and make it the right length, but I think I'm just gonna wrap the excess around this rear AC here and run it on back, or maybe the front AC. See how that goes. And this should solve the problems. Now, I'm not super crazy about my wire routing, but there's not enough slack that it's going to fall off the sides. It should be fine. We'll find that on our next travel day. But you can see I basically went underneath the panels. I went down around the AC, back up, and then back out for the slack. And that just goes right to here. So now the only thing left is a travel day test and maybe some adjustments to the camera angle. First travel day with the new camera. I have no idea. I think it might be angled down, pointing down too low.
Do you want to watch it as we leave the campground and
yeah, I was going to adjust it at a rest stop, but I could do that too. So I turned on the lane or distance guidance thing just looks a little short. We'll see what it looks like moving out of here. I was right, I did have that thing pointed way too low. So I adjusted it a couple of times during our travel day. That is a much better angle.
Indeed.
And it's a nice, super crisp and clear.
It really is. It's a lot, I think it's a lot better than the last one.
Yeah, for sure. After a couple of days of travel having the camera connected, I forgot how nice it was. It's really a big relief to be able to look over here and see directly behind your RV. And I forgot how big that blind spot was back there. There were a couple of times where I checked my side mirrors and then I would look in the monitor and see, oh crap, there's a car back there. Now that doesn't mean a whole lot. It's not like I'm going to slam on my brakes anyway, but just knowing it's back there, and if I decide to change lanes or something, it's really good to be able to check that monitor and see that everything's clear back there. There are a few features of this camera that we're not using that I do want to tell you about, because we might use them in the future, and I also want some feedback from you guys. As I mentioned, we got the 5-inch monitor, which is the smallest one. I imagine it would be kind of cool to have a 7 or 9-inch, but we don't really need that. We're only monitoring one camera at a time. And that brings me to the first feature, is this thing can monitor 4 cameras at once. Now you could put another full camera maybe on the front of the RV. I thought about maybe putting one on the front, on the top or something. You could put one inside the RV. Our RV actually came with a camera mount in the garage. We've kind of blocked that with that cabinet we put in, and we have a Ring camera in there anyway now to keep an eye on the bike while we're traveling and stuff. But they also have some side cameras that go onto your marker lights. So they just wire right into those, and then you can see both sides of your RV. Now that's something we might use. I don't really have a problem seeing the entire side of our RV with these mirrors on our Ford. I really like these convex mirrors. I can see directly beside me and all the way back, and it's really easy to see that you're clear. But we might try those out, and they would definitely be a great addition if you're ever going to be backing your RV by yourself and you want a little bit of extra visibility. And I think this thing can be set to program to see all 4 at once, and then you can hit a little camera button and toggle between them. That's something we might try out in the future. I'm curious how many of you guys have those side marker lights and how beneficial you think that is. Be sure to put a comment down below. I'd like to hear about that. Another thing this camera can do that I do plan on using but I haven't yet is it does recording a lot like a dash cam, where you can put an SD card in there up to 128 gigabytes and it will record over and over, overriding the oldest footage, but you always have the most recent footage on the card. Now we have a dash cam, and I think it would be really cool to have the same thing on the back. The dash cam records inside and out front, and I think those are awesome. If you're ever in an accident or something bad happens, that can mean the difference between liability and not. So it's really good to have that just to back up your story, assuming you're not doing anything wrong. When you buy from Techno RV, you can select a different mounting option for free for either Voyager or Furrion pre-wired mounts. That's pretty cool. We still have a lot of projects left on this RV. Water filtration, power protection, a lot of little projects. So be sure you subscribe so you don't miss those. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.